Throughout history, warfare has been a brutal and destructive force, often marked by acts that go beyond the battlefield. In the ancient world, some of the most shocking acts of violence were committed under the guise of warfare, but their brutality would be classified as war crimes today. These actions left a lasting legacy, not only for the victims, but also for the societies that carried them out. They set precedents for how power and fear were wielded by ancient rulers. In this exploration of ancient war crimes, we will delve into some of the most notorious examples, where leaders and empires showed no mercy to those who opposed them. These are stories of total destruction, unimaginable torture, and ruthless domination. Alexander's devastation of Tyre. In the year 330 BCE, Alexander the Great was sweeping through the Persian Empire, conquering cities with a blend of military genius and sheer force. Tyre, a wealthy and fortified island city located off the coast of modern-day Lebanon, became one of Alexander's greatest challenges and one of his most shocking victories. Known as the Queen of the Seas, Tyre had stood strong for centuries, resisting sieges with its formidable walls and naval strength. But when its leaders refused to surrender to Alexander, they unknowingly sealed their fate. Alexander, determined to break Tyre's resistance, employed a strategy that shocked the ancient world. Unable to attack the city by sea, he ordered the construction of a massive causeway, essentially creating a land bridge to the island. This monumental engineering project took months to complete, with relentless attacks from both sides. But once the Macedonian forces reached the walls of Tyre, the full force of Alexander's wrath was unleashed. After breaching the city's defenses, Alexander's army slaughtered over 6,000 Tyrians. The surviving men, approximately 2,000, were crucified along the shoreline. As a brutal display of power, historian Quintus Curtius Rufus noted that these executions were not just acts of punishment, but deliberate symbols meant to terrify other cities into submission. The remaining 30,000 inhabitants, mostly women and children, were sold into slavery. The once powerful city of Tyre was left in ruins, its streets filled with ash and silence. Alexander's conquest of Tyre became a chilling example of total domination and psychological warfare in the ancient world. It sent a message across empires that resistance to Alexander the Great would mean complete annihilation. Carthage, once a thriving hub of trade and culture on the coast of North Africa, had long been a rival to Rome. Over the course of the Punic Wars, the two powers clashed repeatedly for dominance in the Mediterranean. However, the Third Punic War marked the culmination of their rivalry in one of the most devastating war crimes in history. Rome, under the leadership of statesman Cato the Elder, decided that Carthage must be erased from existence. After a brutal 3-year siege, the Romans breached Carthage's walls in 146 BCE. What followed was a systematic and horrific annihilation of the city. According to the ancient historian Polybius, Roman forces slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Carthaginian civilians. Of the estimated 700,000 people living in the city before the siege, only 50,000 survived, and they were enslaved and scattered across the Roman Empire. The Roman army then razed the city to the ground, ensuring that no trace of Carthage's former glory would remain. Polybius witnessed the aftermath and wrote that the destruction of Carthage was one of the most harrowing sights he had ever seen. Buildings were burned to ashes, and the streets were filled with the bodies of the dead. The ancient historian Appian described how the city's final defenders, many unarmed civilians, were butchered without mercy. The Romans, in their zeal to erase Carthage, spared no one. Women, children, and the elderly were all killed. The utter destruction of Carthage was not just an act of war, but a deliberate attempt to erase an entire civilization. Polybius witnessed the aftermath and noted, "It is one of the most harrowing sights he had ever seen." The fall of Carthage marked a turning point in the Mediterranean, solidifying Rome's dominance and instilling fear across neighboring civilizations. The memory of Carthage's annihilation endured for centuries, a grim lesson of total war and ruthless ambition. If there is any empire known for its sheer brutality, it is the Assyrian Empire. From the 10th to the 7th centuries BCE, the Assyrians ruled over a vast portion of Mesopotamia, employing extreme violence not only as a means of conquest, but as a tool of psychological warfare. Their armies were feared across the ancient Near East, not just because of their military prowess, but because of their horrifying cruelty toward those they captured. The Assyrians were masters of terror. Their kings proudly recorded their deeds in detailed inscriptions, describing how they tortured and mutilated their enemies. One of the most infamous methods they used was flaying, skinning their captives alive, and displaying the skins on the walls of conquered cities. In some cases, they would impale prisoners on spikes and leave them to die in agony, a sight that served as a chilling warning to others. The historian Diodorus Siculus noted they often cut off the limbs of prisoners, leaving them to die slowly as a spectacle for their comrades. Cities that dared to rebel were subject to mass executions, with thousands beheaded or burned alive. Their reign of terror lasted for centuries. But it was this same cruelty that contributed to their downfall. By the 7th century BCE, a coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Scythians sacked Nineveh, putting an end to the Assyrian Empire. Genghis Khan's Mongol Empire, which spanned much of Asia and parts of Europe, was notorious for its shocking brutality and mass executions. The Mongols also engaged in early forms of biological warfare that were particularly horrifying. One infamous example occurred during the siege of the Crimean city of Kaffa in 1346 CE. Many historians believe this event may have played a role in the outbreak of the Black Death across Europe and Asia. One of the most infamous episodes occurred in 1221 CE, when the Mongols captured Nishapur in modern-day Iran after a rebellion killed one of Genghis Khan's sons-in-law. The Mongol leader ordered that the entire population be slaughtered. Persian historian Javani recounted that every man, woman, and child was killed, with death toll estimates reaching 1.7 million. Genghis Khan and his generals employed similar tactics across Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Cities that resisted the Mongols were often completely destroyed, their inhabitants either massacred or enslaved. In addition to their brutal military tactics, the Mongol conquests were accompanied by widespread sexual exploitation. The Viking Age is often remembered for the Norsemen's seafaring raids across Europe. However, beneath their reputation as explorers and traders lies a darker history of ruthless raids and destruction. One of the most shocking Viking raids occurred in 793 CE, when Norse warriors sacked the monastery of Lindisfarne in Northumbria, England. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes the event as a great slaughter, noting the invaders showed no mercy. They killed monks, looted treasures, and set fire to holy sites. This raid was only the beginning of a series of brutal Viking attacks that would terrorize Europe for centuries. Viking raids were characterized by their speed, surprise, and ferocity. In many cases, entire villages were wiped out, with survivors taken as slaves or left to fend for themselves. The Vikings' raids were not just about acquiring wealth. They were about instilling fear and asserting dominance. The ancient world was a stage for some of the most horrifying war crimes ever recorded. Each episode of violence not only reshaped the geopolitical landscape of its time, but also left a legacy of suffering and terror that transcends centuries. These ancient acts of brutality remind us of the profound consequences of unchecked power and the depths of human cruelty. Understanding such atrocities is crucial for recognizing the values of compassion, justice, and human dignity in our own times. The stories of Tyre, Carthage, Assyria, the Mongols, and the Vikings serve as stark reminders of what humanity is capable of in the pursuit of power. As we reflect on these dark chapters of history, it becomes clear that compassion and justice are not just ideals, but necessities for a civilized society. If this exploration of ancient war crimes has captivated your interest, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell.